Welcome, everyone, to the Aging and Spirituality podcast. I'm Kathy Lee Taylor,
And I'm Chris Jensen.
and we are your co hosts in this podcast. We're talking about how to empower women to connect to their inner selves and live more productive, more fulfilling lives from a really kind of an authentic space. I want to talk about something today. We are going to talk about something today that is really about the recent developments in our world and something that people are really struggling with. So I kind of titled it How to Practice Unconditional Love in a World Where Evil is Walking Prominently Among Us. And so that really calls for us to talk about what does evil mean? And I
Yeah,
think it's probably different for all of us, right? I'm going to say what
yeah.
I think it means, and Chris is going to follow up with what she think it means. So for me, when I think about evil, I think about the word evil is backwards to live. It's
Hmm.
so apparent to me, right? That it's the opposite of living. Evil is literally when someone walks away from God, when someone walks away from source and that connection, and they're going in the wrong dang direction. They're choosing dark over light. To me, that's what the definition of evil is. What about you?
Well, yeah, when they're choosing dark over light. But here's the thing. I think we can get into a little bit of a tricky thing here when we say, we're walking amongst evil because, you know, it's very easy to start putting people into those categories.
Okay.
And it's important to understand what our own subconscious is telling us here.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, recently this guy that killed the CEO of United
Oh
Health.
God, yeah.
Now, so many people online were just cheering about this because they're so disgruntled with the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And, we may have that problem. We may be disgruntled about something, but what happens to someone when their mind twists, when they're so frustrated, so angry that they're so attached to that they can't see that this other person, has a soul or is a human being, that they would do that. And I think we all do this in small ways, not such big ways. So that's what
But
I think we have to be careful of. Yeah.
it is, and like ultimately, how are you defining that evil? I think that's the best way I can say it because it's like when they lose the sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the right. Like
Right.
that's a great example of what you're talking about with this fellow. Yeah, we get it. Yeah, that how like they people are comparing it to, well, healthcare kills how many people a year because they don't pay for uh you
Things
know
they should. Yeah.
things that they
Yeah. I
were.
mean, they had AI that was just denying people and, all
And,
kinds
and
of
and
things.
this guy felt like he had to be a vigilante and just like take it in his own hands and take care of it. But it doesn't prove anything, and it's not the way to go about righting a wrong. There's so many other ways to do that. Like if you're going to stand up for something to right it, you could spend your whole life doing that, just talking about how we can reform our healthcare, and there's a zillion options that people have to actually do that. But shooting somebody, it's causing more pain than it's helping.
Yeah.
Somebody
And I
like
think
father.
what I think we need to look at is, how we do that on a subtle level. That's what I was wondering. Like when we look at, we get frustrated with somebody who's done something wrong to us,
Right.
who's, I mean, it's not as bad as killing somebody, but
Yeah.
how do we catch ourselves? How do we see that for what it is, and how do we shift into a more centered place as we look at this person? And we say, okay, they did this to me, and that was really rotten. And
Mhm.
like in the corporate world, people are always doing that. They're always doing, obnoxious things to somebody else. And so, what do you do then? How do you get into that spiritual place where you can deal with them and at the same time have that spiritual light and love coming through?
That's such a good question, and it really is, on so many different levels. What we've been talking about with this fellow that went to such an extreme as to take another person's life. Um, that is the big extreme. It can be as little as having a bad thought, wishing somebody ill will, you know. If when you're practicing unconditional love, you're always coming from a place of goodwill. You're always doing what's best for the other person, even when you're ticked at them, even when you don't care about who they are, even if you've got something personal going on, you take responsibility for what's going on inside yourself, and you still respond from a heart-centered place, from a place of love, unconditional love. That's what we're talking about. So really that actually kind of segues into what we wanted to talk about in terms of our first step, and that is to get your mindset right. It starts right here. Change in the world, peace in the world starts right here with us. We want to take 100% responsibility for our lives. There's no blaming. If you open your mouth and you start to blame somebody else for something that's happened in the day, something that's happened in your life, you already know that should be a trigger right there on the
Yeah.
spot. You
Good point.
already know
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not okay. That's not what's happening, because the world is reflecting back to you the things that you need to learn and understand and grow. And that's what you need to be responsible for, is when that comes back to you, take responsibility for it and grow in your own place. So like one of the things that you can do during the day is really be aware of what's going on in your own mind at all the time. So when you get up in the morning, like, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? What's going on? Can you absolutely sit there and say, I feel like I'm centered in spirit, or do you feel like your ego is taking over? And when your mind is racing and pulling you in a zillion different directions, I got to eat breakfast, I got to go to work, I got to take care of the kids, I got to do blah, 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 blah. Part of that's survival. We all
Hmm.
have to do it. It's how you approach those things that you're doing that makes a difference. If you're coming from an egoic perspective, you're probably going to be coming from a more uh, powered place, like a will-centered place, like I used to be, very much so. Like, just put your head down, don't be concerned about anybody else, just push your way through and get it done, right? So you
Yeah.
like overlook what the reality of being a responsible universal citizen is. Forget everybody else exists. Just get your stuff done, so you can pass out at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is so true, and it reminds me of an experience I had with someone that I had to work with in a volunteer organization.
Uh-huh.
And, here's everyone lovingly giving him themselves, and this person was extremely rude and demeaning to people. And I found myself bristling around this person, just really, and so I thought, okay. I'm a volunteer at a yoga center. I'm trying to express love. I'm really, not expressing that.
Yeah,
I put this person into my jerk category. That's, you know, this category I have.
yeah,
And so I had to step back. And went into the heart center and I stepped back and I, just tried to ask the universe, okay, what do I have to learn here?
yep,
And then I just tried to receive. And what happened was I experienced this person's pain.
yeah,
I
yeah.
felt their pain. And when that happened, it completely changed. All of a sudden, they came out of my jerk category into the
It
human.
changed you. It
It
changed you,
changed me.
and
Yeah,
your
it changed
response.
me.
Yeah.
I came out of that into being much more human. And you know what? After that, my heart was open to this person and he behaved better. He wasn't, you know,
But they always respond to love differently than they do
everybody
when
responds
yeah,
to love.
like
Everybody does.
like you would. If you're somebody's
But
calling you a jerk or angry at you, you're gonna, have a whole different response whatsoever.
it
Which
took a
makes
while before I got there,
yeah. Yeah, well, I think you and I have always focused on getting there faster than a lot of other people, because we know,
Right.
we know what's good's waiting for us on the other side, so we want to get rid of all that stuff that's, in our way, but it makes me laugh because you said, you were at the yoga center, I always laugh when I hear people talk about why is it that when I go to church, it's the person in the car parking lot that's screaming at me for being an idiot or not doing, something,
Right.
because that's we're all there for,
Yeah.
we're
Right.
we're there to do the
Right.
work. That's what it's all about. And it's not always easy, and it's always a challenge because there's always some kind of growth involved. But when you get, this is why we do our cast. When you get good at using the heart, when you get
Yeah.
good at responding with that unconditional love, you start to build this motor. You start to build this process where you can count on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's going to be the best decision you can make. And you learn how to apply it in so many different situations, like example again, you get up in the morning. Are you coming from spirit? Start right there. Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you can express love when you begin your day? You're sitting down to eat your eggs and toast. Are you feeling loving? That cat jumps on you and bites you because it wants something to eat. Are you feeling loving? Like first set your day just with the intention that that's how you want to respond to the world. That's one of the best things that you can do for yourself and the rest of the world, because honestly that is the spiritual work. If you do that process, you're going to find out if your mind, your emotions, or your body are blocking spirit in any way. And that's where your challenge is. That's where your work is. You want to deal with that, And so many of us, when you're first on the journey, you're still dealing with trauma from childhood. That's what the ego is all about. It's that perceived sense of self that we have as little children. And we grow up thinking the world's one way, get older and find out, oh, it really is not. Most of the time, it's really not as bad as we thought it was.
But it takes some practice,
It
to
takes a lot
get
of,
there, to get in touch with that. I mean, I always love the practice of witness consciousness because
love that.
for
Yep.
me, that was one of the things early on and now when I'm in a difficult situation, when I can feel the emotions, the intensity of the situation, and I can feel or if I, whether it's frustration or fear or whatever, at that moment, I remind myself, witness consciousness. So just take a moment, step back, and I do the whole thing. I look around the room, watching it as if I'm watching a movie, not judging, not critiquing. And then I close my eyes and I watch the thoughts and feelings, just like a witness. And what that does takes me out of the intensity of the moment and that allows me to move into a more centered place. And I like to tell people about that because we can all do that. It's not a real difficult thing to do, but in the heat of the moment, it's very helpful.
Yeah, please keep talking about witness consciousness because it's one of the most powerful tools that yoga has to offer.
It really is. It really
Yes, it
is.
gives you that kind of objectivity so you can step away from the emotions, step away from the confused feelings,
Yep. Yep.
step away from the pain or the trauma that may be going on. If you
Yeah.
can create that space and create that objectivity,
Yep.
then you're going to find that that self that you're
Very
able to
different.
reside in is
Yeah.
inside of you. It's
Yeah.
inside of you, and you need to stay in touch with that part because if you respond from that part, you have a much better chance of expressing what spirit wants you to, which is love and acceptance, and all those great qualities that makes it easier to be in relation to anybody else.
Yeah.
In
Yeah. Any
relation to it.
relationship. Yeah.
That's a great one. Okay, so one of the other points that we wanted to bring up, we just have a couple of points that we listed here that we wanted to cover today and just converse about them. Um, so the second one was to watch what you're introducing into your mind every day.
Mm.
So this one came from me because okay, true confession, I am a news junkie. There was a part of me at one point in my early 50s. I went back to college, believe it or not, in my early 50s to do journalism. I went back
Mhm.
and took a couple semesters of journalism and thought I was going to get into it, and actually got counseling from somebody who is a spiritual mentor and said, that's not a great idea. And I ended up walking away from it, and I'm glad I did. But there's a part of me that really gets addicted to the idea of looking at my phone every morning and finding out, okay, what's the worst thing that could be? And in some ways, for me, and I think the honesty of this is that because I was a single mom, I was always in that protector mode, protector,
Mm.
watching, making sure that nothing was going to happen, that I couldn't prevent, that, I couldn't get out ahead of, so
Right.
I kind of
Right.
had that mentality. I look at the news. Okay, well, how bad is it? Let's read the headlines and see how bad is it? Are we going to die today? Is the world going to explode? Am I going to get bombed by a nuclear? But like that's the way my brain works. I'm sorry. I want to tell you that, 45 years down the road, yoga has just eradicated that. It hasn't. I still have moments of feeling like, do I need to be afraid here? Because, and this is why I titled it The Walking Amongst Evil being so prominent right now. And that's because we've had someone who has instigated a lot of fear,
Hmm.
someone who focuses on that as a tool of power,
Yeah.
someone that's out there, creating the dysfunction, the disinformation, all of that stuff that makes us feel unsafe.
Hmm.
And so now we have to really police ourselves in terms of how our mind, emotions are responding to that input that's going on a daily basis. So I've gotten to a place where um, I can look at the headlines and I can say, as objectively as possible, well, that's not going to kill me today. It's the chances of this one happening, probably not very big, or this one, not, I can't do that. I'm not going to worry about that. So I kind of can go through it and wipe out the stuff that I think, okay, and I don't really, and most of the time it's nothing that I can do about it anyway.
I
Why do I
know.
have to
I
have it in
know.
my awareness?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do for news? Do you just don't, you don't look at all, do you?
No, I do. I
Oh,
do.
do you?
I
Okay.
look at my phone. It's unfortunate we have these phones. It's fortunate in one way, but
Yes.
I look at the news, and some of it is disturbing. And but if you remember cognitive therapy, it's just exactly like that. I mean, yoga is not going to eradicate the fact that we have fear, but it
Yeah.
gives us the tools to deal with that so that that isn't what's dominant, and
I,
that's what cognitive therapy does in a way. It's like,
yeah.
well, I had a problem. I had when I was younger, I got stuck in an elevator in the Metropolitan Museum of New York, and
Yeah.
I became very claustrophobic about it. And I was having to go on a business trip to New York. So I went to see a therapist who was very good in this area, and he did cognitive therapy. And the whole process was very much like some of the things we do in yoga. He said, okay, so what do you think is going to happen in this elevator? And what really came out was I thought I was going to die. And he said, okay, let's bring the facts in. They're not airtight, so you're not going to run out of oxygen. He said, average response time is about 20 to 45 minutes. So you're not going to die in that time. You know. He said, the worst thing that probably could happen is you'd have a panic attack. And
Or a cute
he said, and
attack.
you're not going to die of that either. You know? And
Yeah.
you know what? It was very interesting because it worked. It took a little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
It worked. And we did that Chinese, it's like that Chinese puzzle which you put your fingers in. If
Yeah.
you
Oh,
try to
remember
get
those?
tense to
Yeah.
pull them out, it's impossible. If you just relax your fingers, they come right out.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting back into that relaxed mode, you know.
Yeah.
There's a thing we do in hatha yoga, deep relaxation. You lie on the floor and you just try to relax every muscle in your body. And if you're not used to relaxing, that's extremely hard to do. So another practice is if you're lying there, you just lie there as if dead, and that kind of relaxes your body. But whatever it takes to relax and get out of that fear mode, I think is helpful, you know.
And so just I like this subject a lot. And the fact that you brought this up, I want to just ask this question for anybody who's out there and experiencing real live anxiety attacks. Like can't breathe, can't move,
Yeah.
literally feel like you're gonna die on the spot. What will work for somebody in that situation? Deep breathing, what do they go to that will trigger their body to just like release that
Deep,
grip?
deep breathing is one of the best things to get calmed down very quickly.
Okay.
Um, that's actually what he told me if I should be in a situation where I was
In the
having a
elevator.
panic attack in an elevator. Sometimes you see they have people breathing into bags.
Into a bag.
Yeah, but just simple deep breathing. We start with the abdominal area pushing out, then the chest, all breathing all the way up, and then exhaling all the way down. And there's the practice that the Navy SEALs are taught to do when they're in a difficult situation and they're not sure what to do. It's called the box breath. You inhale, deep breath for 4, hold your breath for 4, exhale all through the nose. Exhale through the
Yeah.
nose for 4. And in yoga, we hold the breath out for 4, but they don't. They just do 3 parts of it. But you can do 3 or 4 parts. That's a really big help in
Mhm.
the moment. But then, if you are having a lot of anxiety attacks, you should get professional help.
You should definitely get help.
You should go see a therapist. I mean, there's lots of good therapists around. There's good ones online that can help with that. And usually that kind of thing, it can be helped. I mean, it's.
And that brings up an important point too. I was, talking about being addicted to your phone and always being responsive, watching the news,
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah,
from having notifications come in, turn those suckers off, having the phone ring, turn your phone off, like take phone breaks on a regular basis. But there's also, before you get to that place where it feels like the world is crushing in on you, there's so many things you can do to ward off that kind of anxiety and train your mind to really recognize data in a way that it isn't scary. It's like, so like, for example, you know, if I read something now that I think, oh my God, if the government does that, I'm so screwed, like whatever it is, whatever they're threatening, which they do like on a daily basis. So what I've done is a couple of practices, and I'm going to have Chris talk about non-attachment because that's one of the things that she explains really, really well. But for me, I my whole yogic journey, a big part of my yoga journey has been learning to surrender. So when I get to a place like that now, even if I read a headline
Mhm.
and it triggers me into some kind of a fluctuation in my energy whatsoever, I will surrender that as a fear. I will say, inside, let it go, there's nothing you can do about that. Open your heart and transfer what you're focusing on from the fear to how you feel inside your soul, how you feel
That's
surrounded
such a
with spirit.
great thing. I love that. I
Well,
love
because
that.
you're training yourself to
Right.
have a different
Reprogramming.
response to what is going on.
Yeah.
So I literally sometimes can go through my phone and have it be a practice of centering myself because I'm not going to let this stuff like drive me crazy. So I'll see something that scares me and go, I can feel good about that. Like recenter yourself from what could have taken you right out. Take taking you out for the day, taking you out for the week, like really, throwing you off course.
Mm.
And you use it as a trigger to tag yourself back in.
Yeah.
Get
It can be,
yourself
it can
back
be
in
in that case, it could be a
unconscious.
blessing for you instead of
Yeah,
a,
that's the point I'm trying to make. Make it something that triggers you into a response that is spiritual instead of fear related.
that's
Best
the big key. That's the
That's the
key right
best
there.
thing that you can do for yourself right there. But okay, so there's other yoga practices. One is called non-attachment, not getting attached to things that scare you. Get your blood flowing, get your brain racing, all of those things. So Chris, talk a little bit about that Sahas practice.
Yeah. Well, that's a big thing we work on in yoga because it's our attachments to feeling good, to having the right job, having the right uh,
Mhm.
relationship, to our children's well-being, anything that we feel intensely attached to.
Your
And
goals.
and people misunderstand when we say non-attached, they think you mean like not caring, and it's just the opposite. You care very deeply, it's just not from a self-centered kind of place. It's more from only thinking of the well-being of everyone concerned. And this Sahaj practice, it's another one that I think it's a nice one because it's pretty simple. You can do this walking or moving, or you do it sitting down. And I think it's nice to start down sitting down quietly first because then you get the knack of it. But you just kind of sit and anything that comes up, if fear comes up, you try to shed it like water rolling off a duck's back. You just let it go. And then anything that you start to sense you're attached to, you know, you just try to feel like you're letting it go. Fears, aversions, attachments, desires, you know, anything you really want, just this short period of time, let it go.
Shedding,
Just
shedding, shedding. It's kind of that concept that our teacher is says, when you go in to meditate, right? All you got to do is shed your thoughts. And sometimes you'd be like, is he kidding? Like,
yeah, it's not easy to
not
shed.
easy
But
sometimes
I
to do
find
that. But
when
yeah,
you're actively doing the Sahaj practice and you try to sense that, okay, this is something I'm an aversion, like it maybe not be a
yeah.
huge fear, but I'm avoiding it. So, I'll try to release that in this moment. So maybe for this short period of time, I'm going to take my energy out of that.
Okay,
That's
so
the way I like to look at it. And there's this desire, this thing I want really intensely, and I'm
mhm.
frustrated because I don't have it.
Yeah.
Well, let me take that energy back, the energy I'm putting into that frustration. Let me try to shed the frustration and just take my energy out of that part of it. That's one of the ways that yogis describe doing the sahaj. You don't put your energy on anything outside of yourself, any of those things. You just take your energy back. Don't put it there. And try shedding one thing at a time. You don't try doing like eventually in Sahaj you shed all the fears and the aversions and the desires and the attractions. But start with one thing. And then you can do it, then you can open your eyes, you can walk around your house and do that as you're walking around. And you're going to start to get a new habit, is what it is. You create a new habit.
Mhm.
I think
So,
that's really a worthwhile thing to try, you know.
right, which brings up that thought of someone, I can't remember who said this in along the way, but when you have thoughts that have gone through your mind so many times, you can kind of think of them like they've created like these little worm paths.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
how when a worm goes
yeah,
through the
yeah,
sand, it creates a path. And that's kind of what happens in your brain when you think the same thing for 40
yeah,
years and then you try to
yeah.
change
It's a
it, right?
habit. It's a habit.
Right. So this practice of Sahaj is something where you are creating new wormholes.
That's it.
You're
That's it.
creating new paths
Yeah.
of different ways of responding. Okay, but so address the idea that if the attachment is really, really strong and nothing seems to be working, what do you do?
Um, you do the practice with intensity and repetition.
Okay.
That's what Ramakrishnananda has said over the years. He did a retreat once and he emphasized that. And someone asked him why he was doing that. And he said, because I can sense what all of you are having a problem with, you know. And so it's like anything else, you don't give up, you know.
Okay.
Uh, it's not going to happen immediately. Maybe it is. For some people, it's like that. For me, it wasn't. I was one who had to work at things, but I knew I could be steady. I was willing to keep doing it because I wanted it. And you just do it. You try to, intensely as possible, you try to do this and you keep doing it and you keep doing it. And after a while, it gets easier and easier and easier. No
Well, and there,
one had a busier mind than me when I started yoga, without a doubt.
I don't know about that.
But I kept at it. That's the thing.
Well, the non-attachment, when what I wanted to say is that when you get to where that is working for you, you will know.
You'll
I,
know. You
yeah,
just feel free. You feel relaxed.
yes. And so
It's
you'll,
almost
have
like,
that as a reference point.
right. I see some people sometimes getting upset because in a group and they don't feel like people really liked what they were doing or liked them or whatever. And I thought, who cares?
Who cares? Yeah.
Okay. As long as you're expressing, you
Yeah.
know, truth, beauty, goodness, whatever, who cares? But, when you do care, because there's always something we care about, then yeah, you have to work on that. You have to keep going because there was a time when I really did care about that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I still do. Some things still trigger it. But you have to just when you see that, it's like a flag. Okay, this is an area I need to work on.
That's the great part about aging. You
Yeah,
you
yeah.
stop caring about
I don't care about that stuff anymore. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, what you have time to care about becomes very
yeah.
smaller. So
One thing I wanted to mention when you were talking about taking a break from the news and everything.
yeah.
uh, So I watch my 2-year-old grandson, And so when I take him down for a nap, I turn my phone off or I turn the ringer off. And so usually after his nap's over, I turn it back on. And so yesterday I didn't remember to do that because he was having trouble going to sleep. So I never turned it back on. And last night, I thought, wow, I never turned my phone on and I didn't miss a thing. I mean,
And I feel so good.
I mean, anyone who texted me, I could get back to them when my phone was back. I didn't have
Like,
to
the
answer it
world didn't
like
end.
that,
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't miss all those little, on my iPhone, all that news that comes up at the front.
Yep.
I didn't miss that, It was actually quite pleasant.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just to show you how insidious this is. So the little 2-year-old, he has a little toy phone. So he's got it, puts it up by his ear and he starts chatting away. And we were all trying to say something, and his my daughter wanted to take him downstairs to go to bed, and he wanted me to come with him. And so then he's because when we were talking to him, he said, "I'm on a call," and then so then when he wanted me to come down with him, and I was starting to back away because he was on a call, he put his phone down. He said, "I'm off the call. You can come." But he learned this behavior, right?
Yes.
He didn't come in with that,
Oh, that's for sure. Gosh, there's
And
so much,
so,
we have to talk about that in one talk, just the whole iPhone thing and where
yeah,
we
but I
should
think
right now.
that's part of why this news is so jarring because it's always in front of us.
Yeah.
Before we had to read newspapers,
Yeah. And
we had to go buy a newspaper and read it.
that's exactly right. We had to go get it. Now it's like kung fu, you got to get rid of it.
Yeah, yeah, we can't get rid of it now.
Coming at you 24/7, like you could just bury your phone, I guess, and then you'd be good to go.
Well, you could just leave the ringer off for a
Yeah.
while, for a little while,
There you go.
like, or pick a day, when you do that, because it was quite pleasant.
It is quite pleasant, and we should have no phone zones during the day, certain periods. If you're not working, a lot of us at our age are not, we don't have to be on a schedule,
Right.
get rid of
Mhm.
the damn phone. So the one last thing I was going to talk about was turning negative things into positive situations
Mm.
by reframing. And that really involves being able to stay open and listen and trust, and I actually did relate that to the experience of being on the phone when I would see something that was certainly jarring and think, well, what if that happens? And then being able to say, I can't control if that happens or not. I have to
Mm.
trust. I have to trust that the good of everyone will happen. And, sometimes evil wins. And that's been really hard for me to accept, that we have to go through this process of whatever's going on in this world, this transformation, this transition, that not just America, it's happening around the world. Whatever it is, we have to go through it. So accept it, because we as a country, not just you and me and our little individual spots, our little pods,
Yep.
we as a country are growing, and it hurts, and there you can feel it, it's pulling
Yes.
apart the seams.
Yep.
But we as people that want to be the light, and that was how we started out this conversation, don't fall into the darkness, stay in the light. And in order to do that, you have to stay open, you have to listen, you have to be able to reframe bad situations into good responses, respond with unconditional love as much as you possibly can. You
Oh, that's
want
so
to really
inspiring.
learn
That is.
one of my favorite talks that I've heard Ramakrishna Ananda talk about was the power of doing good. And one of the most powerful things he says in that video, and if you haven't heard it, go to yogaworld.com and find it. Um,
Yogaworld.org.
I'm sorry, yogaworld.org. And really, what he says is, in those moments of complete freak out, when you think the world is going to blow up and we're all going to HE hockey sticks, think about how to express good. And if you can't do it, literally ask spirit, ask your connection. How do I express good here? What is the good that I can do in this situation?
Mm,
Ask for help.
mm,
Ask for help. If you don't feel like you
yeah.
have a connection to source directly, maybe you know somebody that you really admire. Maybe you have a spiritual influence,
Yeah.
somebody you've read that you think, God, they're so, ask them in your mind and heart, what would you do in this situation? How can I express good here? How can I express light here? That
Yeah.
is so powerful. If you ask that question, you're going to stay in the light. No
Yeah.
matter what response you get or answer you get, you're going to be in the light versus focusing on the dark. So think about that,
Yeah.
the power of doing good. So
That's a great, I feel very inspired by that
yeah,
because
it
that we can all do that. Yeah.
goes to the heart of the situation for sure when
Yep.
you want to
It does.
act with unconditional love. That is the place to begin. So, and especially, and this is something that actually Chris had brought up, when people are acting unkind to you, toward you, this is when it's really important to really pull in the always choose love, the unconditional love option, but how do we get there? And the power of good is really the way to
Hmm.
quick start yourself through it. Ask God to
Yeah.
press through you into that person, into that situation. It could be you're seeing, someone do something horrible to somebody. Ask for good to be expressed in that situation right there. Send the
Yeah.
energy there, the good energy there. Set boundaries. You want to feel confident that you can make that connection with spirit at any time and be able to express good in that situation. He says it so beautifully in the talk about, God's going to be happy you're asking. Who takes time out of the day to ask, how can I express good in this situation
Mm.
or to this person? More of us can
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
ourselves and
The
help the
question
world
we can just ask ourselves.
by
That's
doing
great.
that. Be
Yeah.
doing that. So that's a great way to really round up this conversation. It's so
Yes.
enjoyable. Thank you, Chris. It's really
Thank you.
to have this conversation today. Please, if you like our podcast, go to YouTube. We need you to subscribe and we need you to engage and talk with us and tell us how you're feeling about these conversations. We've kind of changed out the format a little today where we were getting to the place where we didn't really want to be just dialoguing and talking to you about what we do. We want to have conversations about how we really apply the yoga that we've learned over the years into our lives. So we're hoping that you can hear how you can apply it to your life and that it really benefits you. That's the
Yeah,
whole
let us know. Let us
program.
know, if you have questions, what you think
Please,
about
please
of it
do.
all.
Please do.
So,
All right. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming.
bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye.
guys.